And joining us in studio, Lucky Tekisho, Transform RSA Deputy President, Jackie Shandu as a political commentator, and Zamo Madlala, Black Empowerment Foundation spokesperson. Gentlemen, good to have you and thanks for joining us. Good evening to you. Are you surprised really by what's now become almost secondary with the SACP coming to the anti-Zuma slogans? I'll start with you, Zamo.
Well, good evening, Cindy, and good evening to your viewers. Well, from our position as a BEF, this is much ado about nothing. It's nothing new. Whilst Mapaila was the second Deputy Secretary General of the SACP, he's already come out with these allegations. We just believe that at this time is probably a way to keep the narrative flowing and to ensure that the SACP is in the media, because they've brought out an illogical and pretty much nonsensical position where they haven't cleared whether they're going it alone, they're still going to go and negotiate with the ANC, what is going on. I believe the resident political analyst here at ANN7 has said that he foresees that there could be a breakaway. So perhaps this is just the way of the SACP remaining relevant to say, if Cyril Ramaphosa is not elected in December, we will certainly look at going it alone, hence the deferral of the decision into 2018 on whether they would go it alone or not.
So, Shandu, are you also in agreement that this is essentially the purpose to almost entrench the SACP if that is a decision that they will make going it alone for 2019 elections?
Indeed, absolutely correct. I mean, I share precisely the same sentiments here, that it's just an anti-Zuma posture, not necessarily anti-ANC, and in some way, even in terms of the resolutions of their own conference, they're still keeping their cards close to their chest to say, let's give ourselves some time. If this guy emerges, we pull out. But if our guy, who is Cyril, he emerges victorious, and then we stick with the alliance. So it's very sad, I mean, especially when you think about what a communist party in any country is supposed to stand for, represent the downtrodden, the working class. And we've seen the SACP in the past couple of years just grandstanding on issues that have nothing to do with the plight of the poor. And we live in a country characterized by unemployment and one of the largest inequality gaps in the world. And it's been long since we've had the Communist Party really advancing the interests of the poor. Instead, they want to be power brokers in factions that have nothing to do with what a communist party in any given society is supposed to stand
So are you
for.
saying this is self-preservation and not necessarily giving that voice, as you're saying, we've got much bigger issues to deal with in the country, and with the SACP now not entirely guaranteed whether their own members will have ministerial positions in the 2019 cabinet. Is this really about self-preservation in your view, Randy?
Yeah, it is. And what is also another issue that we need to raise is that this affidavit that it talks about is so illogic. It does not. It's shocking us, and we think that it's shocking us to such an extent that we even think that perhaps it's true that all the time when they talk about the president, the name of Pravin and Jonas are always there, and to us it's a problem because it confirms this thing that it might have been super ministers. And perhaps it's one of the reasons why the president had dealt with them. But to come to the main issues, we're under the view that it's really not assisting for the party to want to put their feet both sides, and for us it's not principle, it's not a principle stand, and they have to take a decision. Either they are with the alliance or not. Because it doesn't help for them to be able to continuously talk about issues that they don't perform. And at some point, they must be able to come out clear to say, yes, now we are going astray and we're not going to be with the alliance and lose the pegs. Because I think it's the pegs that makes them not to live.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about configuring the alliance so that there's almost an equal partnership, if you will. In that sense, it won't necessarily be, I mean, which flag and shape would it take? They talk about lack of consultation on major decisions within the ANC-led alliance. And now they're saying the NEC must take action against President Zuma. And constitutionally, we know that that is a decision that the branches would make. Why then would you want to create this ruckus, Mr. Madlala, if you are familiar with the workings and the mechanisms of the alliance?
Well, let's start with the consultation process. There's a difference between consulting and consensus. I think what the SACP really would like is consensus. What the president then came out and said is that I did consult with the alliance. They may not have agreed. He did consult. Consultation does not equate to agreeing with my decisions. So at the end of the day, he's the president, and Section 85 says quite clearly that the executive authority sits with him. Now, the internal ramblings of the alliance are that he is the president of the country, the executive authority sits with him. Now, I'd also note that when the report is stated that the ANC, Mr. Mapaila hopes the ANC NEC takes note. I would think that given that the Secretary General of the SACP would be sitting in the very same meetings he sits in and also goes to the NEC, there'd be no need to really report this through the media because the very same Secretary General sits within the ANC NEC. So we just think that this is just jockeying for positions. And he's been set out as, if you have a pack of dogs, you have various. You have the dogs that bite, and then you need the little chihuahua that's going to keep on barking. And I think that's pretty much.
I mean, what other alternative was there for the SACP and this bombshell, I suppose, of one would call alleged evidence that the president had announced that there is an intelligence report that he's basing his decision to reshuffle his cabinet, which is a prerogative of the president. And yet there is no sight of this report, number one. So what other alternatives were there within this democratic state that we're in that the SACP could have employed to ensure that this thing is ventilated properly?
Well, the SACP is an alliance partner of an alliance, tripartite alliance that is led by the ANC. And that gives them those platforms at which issues are ironed out, within those structures, But what's also interesting, as you point out, is that obviously the onus, the burden of proof lies with Solly Mapaila, because our law operates obviously on the presumption of innocence until guilt is proved, But also, Section 91 of the Constitution, which deals with the powers of the president and the national executive, is very clear that the prerogative lies with the president to appoint and to dismiss, and it ends there. It does not speak about even having to provide reasons.
Or rationale.
Rationale. Yes. This is why. Because this charge, this affidavit, all it says is, you have created this pretext, which is a lie, that there is this report. But how do you prove that? That indeed there was no report. Where is the evidence? So hence, everyone is saying, I think there is consensus here that this is more of a publicity stunt. I think the SACP has resolved that we are going to fight this Zuma-led administration with all that it has. We will tarnish its image, we will put it into disrepute, and we will cause chaos. And so it's seemingly all, anti-Zuma elements, in the ANC, even outside the ANC.
But this doesn't bode well for the call for unity in action, exactly. Of Owar Tambo, putting a united front to ensure that the ANC survives, in the very same words, saying that if you cut that umbilical cord, there's no guarantee that the SACP will survive. That's so true. All of this, it doesn't benefit, the long-term or the longevity of the alliance.
No, exactly. And the other question that needs to be asked is making this affidavit in whose name? As the South African Communist Party second Deputy General Secretary, or as him, as Mr. Solly Mapaila? Perhaps that must be clarified, because either way, we think that he's bringing political issues into government. Because when you make an affidavit, it becomes a lawful issue that must be resolved by government. The Inspector General is working for government. Now, if you bring in political issues, because that's clearly a political issue, whether the intelligence report was there or not is not an issue. But why can't you then resolve that issue politically? Why don't you go to the ANC and be able to resolve that issue within the ANC and the party? Why bring it to government? You understand? So it's blurring really the roles of government and political issues. So we think it's so wrong that it must not even be taken serious. It's a grandstanding issue, as correctly stated.
Yeah, but it is divisive, though, because there is a conducive environment within the ANC itself where we've seen the factional battles going on there, the anti-Zuma and pro-Zuma camps, and that's even influenced the proposal to have what do you call it, I suppose, like a second president or deputy.
Sure.
But they're part of it.
I just lost my train of thought there. So maybe that is what President Zuma was trying to do in bridging that possibility of having a splinter party.
Well, the president may have proposed that, but we believe ultimately it's the branches that will decide. And I think there are those that have come out and commented that it would probably be highly unlikely for such a serious proposition to even come into effect in December. So we don't really know what would happen there. But as you say, that the president was attempting to bring unity, although I didn't understand how it would work out. I mean, it has come out now that Lindiwe Sisulu has accepted nomination, Matthews Pause has also accepted nomination. So you would supposedly have 4 candidates running. So who then gets elected to be the automatic deputy president? So it brings about many, many machinations that are not that simple to actually address.
But how much weight does this new legal salvo now carry in light of the environment that we find ourselves in with the tripartite alliance?
Well, I wanted to actually speak about that, to say, it's very sad because there are 3 branches of government, the cabinet as well as the National Assembly, as well as the judiciary. I think already there's this wrong precedent that has been set. We've seen it with opposition parties in particular. It's very easy to go to the judiciary. Political challenges that need the other 2 branches of government, and it has a likelihood. We speak about judicial overreach, we speak about not overlapping, but it seems, even the judiciary might itself get overwhelmed because every now and then there are clearly political issues that are brought for it to preside over. And we've seen some of those issues, actually, the judiciary trying to distance itself because it can see that, but if this carries on, we are going to end up with just one major branch of government, which is the judiciary, which even takes political decisions. Yeah. And the other 2 branches will just remain ceremonial.
But what threat does that pose to a constitutional democracy if now you're saying that we're running almost a parallel government in the judiciary?
Well, what it does is actually giving too much power to the judiciary. One would haste to say that it will almost look like it's really co-governing, co-governing with the ruling party. Though we must also hasten to say some of the issues are rightly there, but I'm saying most of these other issues are really political and can be resolved politically. So what it does, it really affects the democratic state that we are in, because now people does not have the right to be able to take decisions as a majority, because then the decisions are took in courts and by other people that does not have the powers to be able to take those decisions.
But if I may add also, it's somewhat also, it makes a mockery of what is clearly stipulated in the Constitution about the powers and the functions of all these 3 branches of government. The National Assembly must legislate, it must make laws, the cabinet must implement, and the judiciary must deal with the legal issues. And once you try now and take a mandate that resides within a particular branch of government and you take it to another, we are headed for a constitutional crisis itself.
But Mapaila is not in isolation. You've seen a chorus of voices around the anti-Zuma sentiment and him saying every day he struggles to accept the leadership of President Jacob Zuma. And yet, on the one hand, we also say we are a country that respects the Constitution, and if a president were to make a decision, and that is provided for in the Constitution, there's almost a contradiction in how we interpret what is right for President Jacob Zuma vis-a-vis any other citizen. I mean, how do you see this playing out, especially in the lead up to the 2019 elections?
Well, somehow I also end up confused and not understanding really what is going on, because the president has come out very clearly that he does not seek a third term. So he's not campaigning towards anything. So the whole machination that is going on now and the whole infighting, I suppose it ought to be about who takes over and leads going forward. The current sitting president has not shown any interest of wanting to stay in power beyond his mandated term, which ends in 2019. So at the end of the day, the actual politicking is really hard to understand. That what is this campaign about? I mean, I was hearing reports earlier on of somebody coming out and saying that actually candidate Cyril Ramaphosa has actually never effectively campaigned for any position, hence there may be disarray amongst his forces in terms of how to ensure that he ends up being the lead candidate come December. And they may be of the opinion that keeping media stories going may, at the end, influence the branches towards a particular decision. Well, that's hypothetical as well.
All right, well, do you think the majority in the ANC will bite or take the bait now of the anti-Zuma or the revival there of Retekishu?
No, I don't think so. I think our view as a Transform RSA is that I think the branches know what they want. And I think the branches, in my view, the majority of them has already decided to say who they want. So whatever fake news that comes to them, it's just fake news to them because they know their leaders, they know what they're standing for. And we can say here without any doubt that whoever talks about radical economic transformation and land without expropriation, without compensation are the people that really speaking to the people. And I think they have a better chance of winning, rather than those that does not even want to acknowledge white monopoly capital.
But I mean, they've ridiculed or rubbish that, saying that it's a distraction of sorts from the real issue, that of state capture, and that, President Zuma, or rather looting in state-owned entities. So, Mr. Shandu, your expert observation on really what's going on for the benefit of our viewers.
No, of course. I mean, you would have to be blind and dumb to question, let alone refute, the existence of white monopoly capital. And when you speak about state capture, we've always made this point. Don't limit it, historicize it, and also broaden it, because what you speak about, I mean, communists should know. The Communist Manifesto does say that in a capitalist state, the political class just manages the common affairs of the ruling class, which is the capitalist class. So there's no way, you can then seek to suggest, particularly as a communist party. I mean, of course, it's interesting. Mapaila speaks of lies in the affidavit. This gospel of lies that begins with Thabo Mbeki last week, that everything is based on lies. So there's this non-existent moral high ground that anti-Zuma faction in the ANC are trying to take and present themselves as paragons of, morality and ethics, when we know that between 1994 and 2004, or 2009 in particular, the increase in wealth gap, the consolidation of white economic power in South Africa, and we don't care to go back and look at these things. What was the gap between rich and poor, black and white in 1994? And when the ANC took over, Thabo Mbeki at the helm, Mandela was the face. So Thabo Mbeki basically had 3 terms, and those 3 terms were effectively used to take more resources away from black people and give them to the same people that had been benefiting since apartheid, even before apartheid, during British colonialism. So in South Africa today, this is the biggest fight. We have amongst our ranks politicians that are in the pockets of those who are against transformation, decolonization, and the sharing of the wealth.
Yeah. Can we reduce it? Because it is rather a vociferous campaign that is consistent in the anti-Zuma. I mean, it doesn't go every day. There's something around the Guptas and President Jacob Zuma and all sorts of allegations. So when you look at it in the bigger scheme of things, can we just say that these are deliberate campaigns to discredit him because white monopoly capital. Can we just reduce it to that? Or, as Mr. Shandu is saying, that these are altruistic positions that leadership is taking to be holier than thou and for praises?
Well, the Black Empowerment Foundation, we really exist because of what Mr. Shandu has just described, that since 94, the changes have only been for the few. And the few, one only need to go on the internet and you will find who the few that have benefited and become ultra-wealthy are. The masses at large have not been empowered. Currently, we have a mining charter that has now been put on hold. And it has been put on hold. All it's asking for is a 4% increase on the old charter. And all it's doing is really broad-basing the empowerment. And we have former unionists, leaders of the revolution, now speaking against it. Now you only have to ask yourself and look at the realities and you see why it is they are protecting their own individual interests over the interests of the majority. And that cannot be allowed. And President Zuma appears to be the first president to come out and call it out. And therefore, we do expect that monopoly capital, whether you want to begin and define it and say it's white.
Of course it's white.
We certainly believe at times that there are those who are non-white, who have amassed some wealth, who feel left out of the club if you just call it white monopoly capital, and they'd love to be included.
But maybe just to follow up, is you also asked your question, the question, who is really speaking out against this thing?
Sure.
You know, you would find that the majority of these guys that are speaking out are really rich people that have been benefiting from all of these things, that have been benefiting by the policies of the ANC for that matter. But one would also think that they might be silent partners in these big conglomerates and multinational companies. And now, if we are to change, they might be affected. So I'm saying they serve their interest. I agree with what Zam is saying, to say perhaps the reason why they are speaking so loud and out is because they have an interest. If we were to change these things, what will happen to their shares within these massive companies that are there?
But they are bodyguards. The point must be made. Owners of means of production in South Africa are white. And you can break it down to sector by sector.
Mr. Shandu, we're going to have to leave it there. I beg your pardon. We're speaking to Lucky Tekisha, Transform RSA Deputy President, Jackie Shandu as a political commentator, Zamo Madlala is spokesperson for Black Empowerment Foundation. And you at home, thanks indeed for joining us. We're back after this.